This is Sessions with Sara Cate and Ashley, a podcast that explores the feelings, emotions, and experiences of what it means to be human in this world. This podcast is intended for educational purposes only and is not meant to replace therapeutic services of any kind. Please refer to the list of references if you need support.
And before you dive in, please like, subscribe, comment, share with anyone you think might also connect with today's session. Our goal is to reach as many people as possible, and we are endlessly grateful for your continued support. So, let's get to it.
Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Sessions with Sara Cate and Ashley. I am Sara Cate.
I'm Ashley.
And if you are joining us on the tube of you will see that, in fact, we are in the same place again. We're together. Nothing has drastically changed. Ashley has still left me and lives in Atlanta. However, she is visiting. And so we are going to do, hopefully, a couple sessions together today. So
yay.
She's back. I get to turn and look at her.
I know.
I was telling the guy at the coffee shop when I was getting us our treats. He was like, got anything cool today? I was like, well, the person that I do my podcast with is back in town, and so we're actually together. He goes, oh, it's so much better that way.
Oh,
he was like, the charisma that people have when they're in the same room. And I was like, I know, it does feel wonderful.
It really does feel wonderful.
It really does. And we're still, crushing.
Yeah.
Separately. We can do both. We can be more than one thing. Look at that. So today we wanted to just kind of have a little drop in. This will be a shorter episode, but when Ashley got here, she was kind of reflecting on having now moved and come back. And so I was kind of asking, or we were talking a little bit about when you realize you've outgrown something, or like, what does it feel like when you come back to like kind of almost do a check-in? I think it's kind of like dropping in with an old pattern or an old habit or an old thought, right? Of like, or an old belief rather of like, oh, I used to do this. I don't do it anymore, or I don't do it as much anymore. Is it still really a belief I have then? And kind of like challenging some old thought patterns, belief patterns when we revisit them as a different person.
Yeah.
So what would you say about that, Ash?
Well, where should we begin? No, I did, like, literally I did just that. And it kind of started from the moment my sister picked me up from the airport, and my sister and I have this like tradition of, if we pick each other up from the airport, we bring each other snacks. I know it's really a lovely thing, and everybody should do that. Or maybe if you're picking me up,
Ashley, noted, I will have snacks. Ashley is a snack fiend, by the way.
I am. But who doesn't love tasty treats?
That's true. Tasty treat addict over here.
Anyways, so I get in the car, and we're like laughing about snacks, and I'm telling her where we need to immediately go get coffee, and she's like, okay, but we're driving away, and I don't, if you've ever like left the Denver airport, you have like a view of the mountains, but there's not a whole lot around. And I just was kind of like, okay, what does it feel like to be back here?
Yeah.
Right? Like, what does it feel like to be in Colorado? And I had just gotten back, right? So it's not like I had spent a lot of time here, but it was kind of like, oh, this is the place where I spent a lot of time. And this is the place that is no longer my home. And it was, like I was telling Sara Cate, it was kind of like a cool confirmation of, and even yesterday, I spent so much time with my niece yesterday, and we were doing like all the things that we like love to do together. And I got to pick her up from school, and I used to do that a lot, but it was like, okay, I'm picking her up from school, like, but this isn't something that I do often anymore. And it's really nice. And I am so like happy, and I'm so proud of myself, and I feel so connected to the choice that I made to move, and how, I think it's really hard when we were just talking about this too, like, something is coming up, you're about to, whether it's a move, whether it's a career change, whatever, and it's coming, and there's all this fear that can happen, and you can get really caught up in it. And there's like, and then you move, and there's all this adrenaline and, all of that stuff. I don't know that we spend enough time then giving ourselves the opportunity to reflect on one that it was hard, right? And that you had to really stand in alignment with yourself when maybe others didn't understand. And it was just so good to feel like, no, you made this choice for you. And I'm just so happy that I did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and I think what we can reflect on, in hindsight of things, like I think that there's such value in the reflection and in the going back. Like, we don't have to ruminate on what was, but I know even for me, every time I go home to Michigan or I'm in Grand Rapids, where I spent, my really young, like, adult formative years of like 18 to, when did I move? 30, essentially. I can go back to the things that I loved, and then I can have the like sticky icky moments with some of the places that like give me the ick or the cringe,
Yeah.
where I'm like, oh man, I remember that thing or that emotion or that feeling when I lived in that house. I remember exactly what I was feeling, and that's oof. That gets me, and being able to reflect on it. I think even early on going back, the reflections were harder. Like the reaction was a little bit more intense. And now with over a decade almost here, I go back and I'm like, oh yeah, like that was hard. And right. It becomes less and less of a story now that I'm indoctrinated into.
Totally.
And I think like getting to reflect helps us figure out exactly where we want to go to.
For sure.
Like what do you want more of now? Like coming back here, seeing this, remembering what you had here, remembering what didn't work, what worked, and then going back to Atlanta and like helping that kind of be your expander then when you return.
Totally. There were times prior, I mean, and I don't know what episodes those were, but like I talked about how like I knew that Denver wasn't where I wanted to be for years, right? And it just took me a while to like actually make that move. But in those years, I can remember talking to people and I would say things like, I just don't feel like, regardless of what I do, I'm not getting to where I want to be, right? And people would sometimes say back to me, well, like, it's, you're responsible for making your life joyful. And like, yes, that is 100% true. I'm in charge of my own happiness. I'm in charge of my own pleasure, all of that. And there's a difference between gaslighting yourself into thinking that like you have to make it somewhere that that you just like don't really like in your heart of hearts want to be. And so part of it has been, or part of my journey in leaving has been, am I running from something, right? Was I just like refusing to do something so that I could be like fully in where I needed to be, right? Which is so unfair to do to myself because I just knew that I didn't want to be here. And like, it's okay to not want to be in a certain location. It's okay to not want to be in a relationship. It's okay to not want to be in a career anymore, right? Like it's
okay to change.
Yeah. And it was really interesting to me to hear people say that of like, well, because I remember saying, well, like it hasn't been easy, like here in Denver. And they were like, well, you can change that. Like, yes. And I'm doing everything, right? Like I'm doing the work, but I don't feel in my center that this is where I'm supposed to be. So how long am I willing to fight against this, right? Like how long am I willing to fight against that?
Yeah.
Instead of saying, okay, no, like you have tried, like you didn't give up. This isn't running away from something. This is just you moving on to that next piece. And so then being in Atlanta for these last few months and coming back, feeling what that choice to stay aligned with myself is like and how, I mean, I just love it there. And so like feeling that expansiveness in my body when I came back here of like how differently I feel. I mean, I'm just really grateful for that confirmation.
Yeah. And that's what it is. It's a confirmation, right? Like, yeah. And I think we often need those confirmations. Like as much as we do, I think a lot of the goal of the work that I do with my clients and the work that I do in my own personal kind of journey is to feel really aligned and at home and not in need of external validation.
Right.
However, there are moments that we do, right? There are moments that we absolutely need the outside world to mirror what we're feeling internally. And I think that, you know, getting to come back and reflect on that and getting to see, oh yeah, it was right. It was the move. It was the choice. You know, that kind of experience of resonance with ourself and our world is so lovely, you know, because so often I think there's so many times that I feel like, oh, God, this is not what's externally happening, what's internally happening are not connecting, are not clicking. And that if we live in that consistent conflict, it can feel really, really hard. We doubt ourselves. We don't believe what we're feeling. We don't follow our intuition, you know? So like when it does resonate, I think it's always such a gift to like savor and like kind of be like, oh yeah, look at this. And this can be, you know, it doesn't have to be something as big as a move, right? Like it can be something simple as like, I chose not to go to that event and I feel so much better tonight. Or I chose to meet up with that person and have this hard conversation and now I feel clearer. Whatever it might be. Or it can just be something as simple as nourishing yourself in a different way today of like, oh wow, I actually drank all of my water that I wanted to drink today. That actually feels really good. And like giving yourself the permission to be proud and to be grateful and appreciative, or to be even just relaxed, you know, because you're like, oh man, something I wanted to do today, I did. That out breath of relief, you know?
It's really interesting. This just clicked in my head, as I'm sitting here listening to her, but when I was coming back, I literally was like, I'm seeing a couple clients while I'm here and they're lovely. I can't wait to see them, you know? But I literally went back to like, okay, I'm here this day through this day. So I have this amount of time on this day to see clients and this amount of time on this day to see clients. And I can do this on this day and this on this day, which is what I did when I lived here. I thought that my entire existence was for seeing clients. And I was like, I reached out to a couple and we had like tentatively scheduled something. And these two in particular, I was supposed to see them yesterday. I was literally going to fly in, rent a car and go see clients. Like, what was I even thinking? But whatever. But they both ended up having other things going on and they were like, I can't. And I was like, thank God, right? Like why? But I was immediately pulled back into that, like, okay, this is who you were when you were in Denver. So this is who you have to be. Right. And I'm here to celebrate my niece's birthday. Like it's okay to go somewhere and just go to enjoy your time, you know? But that pattern of where I was at when I was here it was like, it came right back because that's what I told myself had to happen while I was here. And so seeing how like easy it is to like come back to that, but then also be going through this like internal, like, no, okay, that is what you would do when you were here. And it's not actually how you have to continue, right? Like you still have the choice, right? And now you have proof, you have more proof of what happens when you stay aligned to yourself of, okay, I get to like have a little bit more control over my time and how I spend it and who I spend it with and all of that.
Yeah, totally. And I think a really good practical application of this is a question that I've started using more and more in my day-to-day, because I think sometimes we change. And unless we have like a big catalyzing change, like a big move, it's hard to reflect on the fact that we're changing all of the time, every day. And so we will not often challenge beliefs or thoughts that we're still carrying about ourselves. So Ashley's talking about this, like, oh, I have to be busy and see my clients. And that's the priority. Seeing clients is the priority of my life. And the challenge in that was like, she was like, no, I'm coming back to see my niece and spend her birthday with her. That is actually secondary to my life. And that is like a good check-in for her to like notice how that's a story and that's a narrative she used. And I've been doing this with like, you know, when I talk to friends and I speak in these like absolutes sometimes, and I'll say, oh, I never do that. or I've always done this, right? I speak in these like really strong absolutes. And there's times where I'm like, fuck, Sarah, that's not true anymore. Why are you even saying that out loud? And like, you know, and if you do any like law of attraction work or any of those things, like that is actually just going to make that true.
Yeah.
Right. And so like, I've been doing this thing where I'll say something and I've done just enough work to like have this moment of like, is that really true anymore? And I'll stop. And this is a super vulnerable thing, but I will stop myself in mid conversation and say, hold on, I don't know if that's actually true anymore. Let me sit with that for a second. And I'll say, okay, it's not always. It's when I'm feeling X that I do this now. Right. And we have to, if we don't have a relationship yet to our embodiment and our like, you know, and I'm fighting for it, right? I'm working for it. We all are.
We all are. Yeah.
And so I'm working to really feel in my alignment and feel in my body and feel connected. And we fall out of alignment all day, every day. And the path is to come back, right? And so if we're in that practice of constantly like losing ourselves, maybe to whatever it is that we're around, this is a good way to start. Because if you stop yourself in that moment saying something that like you have an inkling isn't true anymore, then you get to come into presence with your body and be like, hold on, what do I actually feel about this? Oh, no, I don't, that isn't also what I believe about myself anymore. So I need to not say that about myself anymore.
Yeah.
You know, and I can, when I do that, it gives me a moment of presence with my own body and my own like knowing. And I'm like, oh yeah, no, that isn't.
Yeah.
Or that statement needs to be adjusted like this. And I think, you know, this is the gift of, you know, being aware and trying and opening ourselves to this work and to learning our bodies more and to discovering our bodies more of like how we have so much support here that we haven't been given access to, and we don't know that we have access to it.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that you do that.
It's hard.
Oh yeah.
And embarrassing sometimes. Cause I will like, and it happens a lot. I don't know for you, but like it happens a lot when I go home, and I was just home in July, and I'll like tell stories about when I lived there. And I was like, that's so not true about me anymore, you know, or it's easy when we go back to places that we were a different person to reflect on that.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And when people were around, you know, it's hard, I think, when sometimes we have people in our life who we have been friends with through the many phases of who we are. And I think those friendships or relationships, whatever kind of relationship it is they're so cool because we have witnessed them in all of their stages, right? And they've witnessed us in all of our stages. And so they kind of see that growth as how we've changed, right? And so they might also know that like who we were when we were 25 living in this different place, and we say something and now we're 37, it doesn't like jive, right? Like it's not the same, but it's when how easy it is to be connected to who we used to be when we are in those familiar settings of where we were at that time, how easy it is to fall back into like who we were then also, right? It's like our brain, because our brains are so connected to our surroundings, maybe more so than what we give it credit to, that like, it's why sometimes when you like, you know, you lose somebody that you love and certain smells immediately bring you back to this one memory in their kitchen with them when they were making that same food, right? Or whatever it is, right? It's why we have those connections in our brain. And so it is really hard when we're in those situations to not think that that's going to happen. But like Sara Cate said, this journey to having more embodiment within ourselves is how we start to undo the beliefs that we have to still act like that, or that we're still subscribing to those old beliefs. But that's like, I don't know, it is kind of cool.
It is.
It is. But
well, and I think, you know, I think we all deserve. So let's collectively right now take a moment to breathe into the spaces in your life that you feel that you want a new story to be told, or even you want to examine the story that you tell, right? And see if you can just give it a little presence. Bring it into your body and ask, where does that feel true? Not, is it true? But where does that feel true? Does it feel true in your gut? Does it feel true in your heart? Does it feel true in your mind? Doesn't really matter. But like, see if you can give some presence. Cause like Ashley was able to do that. She was able to slow herself down by returning and being like, oh, like that level of like engagement isn't actually what is going to nourish me. And so let me reorganize a little bit. Right. And like, that is what that if we bring things back to our own selves in a moment, the first step is just being like, does that feel true for me? Is that, you know, a belief system I want to carry forward?
Yeah.
And we get to do that ever evolving.
Yeah. Yeah.
So check in with yourself today if you want and say, And I love it when my friends are like, huh, that's so funny when I do it, right? Like it actually, at first it was like scary because I was like, they're going to think I'm a liar. You know, they're going to think I'm lying. And they're like, oh no, I need to do that. You know, like I need to actually stop telling stories about myself I don't want to tell anymore.
Yeah, for sure.
But for the moment, we are so happy to have Ashley back in the mountains. This is a very good day for me.
Well, it's a very good day.
And as always, please like, subscribe, share, send to anybody who you think might find comfort or support in starting to challenge some of their beliefs, knowing that we're doing it right alongside all of you, ever changing and evolving.
Yes.
And until next time.
Until next time. Bye.
Bye.